Previously in The Sims 4, artistic genius Schmablo Picasso rose to fame and fortune with the help of his muse and love interest, Bella Goth. Everything was going perfectly, and Schmablo was painting pieces that dazzled the eyes and sizzled the retina. Then, it all changed, as the woman he trusted most in the world betrayed him. Bella Goth revealed her true colours as a hardened gangster, and stole every single piece of artwork Schmablo had ever created. Now an esteemed musician, Schmablo has decided to put everything on the line, even faking his own death, spreading rumours that he was killed by an overexposure to dubstep, all for the chance to reclaim the paintings that are rightfully his. His next step will put him into a world of jeopardy, but to achieve his goal, he must bring the system down from the inside. Schmablo was going to join a criminal gang. Name: Robbie Rotten, seasoned criminal of the Lazytown circuit. Arrested 86 times on counts of battery, arson, kidnapping, vibing too hard, and much more. Captured every single time by a strange man in a blimp called Sporticus, Robbie is out to get revenge. Not just on Sporticus, but on the whole world. Name: Fagin. Cunning like a weasel, he uses a network of poor orphan boys to do his dirty work. Having branched off from the cast of the musical Oliver to pursue a career in villainy, his sneaky antics and brilliant tactics will always keep the gang one step ahead. Name: Dick Dastardly. Previously a race car driver in the Wacky Racers Grand Prix, Dick decided to retire from motorsport and went to work in IT. Now with a wealth of computer experience under his belt, there isn't a program in the world he can't hack into. Google Chrome, Microsoft Paint, CoolMathsGames.com, you name it, he can hack it. Together, this trio form the infamous gang known as Triple Trifle, but their name will now hold a more ironic tone, as they've just accepted a fourth member into their ranks. And they can't wait to teach Schmablo Picasso the ropes. It was a fine day in the peaceful neighbourhood of Willow Creek, and Schmablo had received special intel that this was to be the place of his gang's new headquarters. He turned up on site and was greeted warmly by his new co-workers. Immediately, they all began to bond by fantasizing about the various things they wanted to steal. In an attempt to win favour with the group, Schmablo told everyone that he would like to steal a car. Of course, in reality, he wouldn't steal a car, and on the same vein, he certainly wouldn't pirate a movie. The boys were convinced though, and they all took the opportunity to move in. From the get-go, it was clear that these three were high-level criminals, and Dick Dastardly began to show off his skills by hacking famous people's Twitter accounts without even looking at the computer screen. Fagin then picked up the iPad and began downloading apps with free trials and then cancelling the subscription to get 7 days for free. As Schmablo didn't have any villainous skills to show off yet, he thought he would instead gain his gang's trust by cooking them up a batch of his famous French toast. Schmablo was rather good at cooking, and one day he might even host his own cooking show. After eating their meal, the gang decided it was time for their first ever criminal outing. And so, they crept out onto the street and began to wreak some havoc. It wasn't long before they found their first unsuspecting victim. Dick Dastardly took it upon himself to do a bit of tomfoolery, but whilst he did so, something rather peculiar happened. A visitor had arrived at the door of their secret lair. The Triple Trifle gang didn't have time to be bothering with visitors. They had bad deeds to be getting up to, and Schmablo and the crew walked straight past the visitor without even a wave. But then, Schmablo stopped in his tracks. She was quite possibly the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Always the romantic, Schmablo couldn't resist introducing himself to his new crush, Megumi. And, before long, they were getting on like a house on fire. But eventually, thoughts of Bella Goth began to sneak back into Schmablo's mind, and he became embarrassed, so he left to go and splash around in the pond. Whilst he was doing so, Megumi invited herself inside, and for some reason, began searching through the files on the gang's computer. Oh well, it was probably nothing. And, after clearing up the mess he'd made outside, Schmablo decided to try again. This time, Megumi and Schmablo got on even better, and soon they were good friends. They chatted the rest of the day away, and eventually Megumi went home. And this meant it was finally time to get down to some real business. As they searched on Google Maps, the gang held a meeting to try and decide where to stage their very first heist. And, of all the places in the neighborhood, they settled on the library. This was perfect. If they were going to learn how to steal, then what better way to do so than steal books that would teach them how to steal? That night, the gang arrived at the library under the cover of darkness, and they immediately split up so as not to draw too much attention. Schmablo entered, grabbed a book off the shelf, and began to read 101 Ways to Steal an Old Woman's Purse by Michael Morpurgo. Blimey, he's branched out from children's fiction, thought Schmablo. Meanwhile, Fagin was on the prowl, and with his superb stealth, he was able to steal a desk lamp without anyone noticing. With a great rush of adrenaline, the gang escaped from the library as quickly as possible and rendezvoused at some nearby picnic benches. Giddy with excitement and reveling in their victory after a hard day's being bad guys, they all headed home and went to sleep. The next morning, spirits were high, and the guys were all still feeling triumphant about their first steal. "A lamp! A whole lamp!" they said to each other. "How can we ever top this?" It was a difficult question. What could be a bigger heist than stealing a whole desk lamp? If they were going to go even bigger, they would need more equipment. And, because of this, 2 new state-of-the-art hacking stations were installed into the secret lair. These new computers allowed them to get up to even more mischief, and it was Schmablo this time who kicked things off, by copying out everything he'd read last night and publishing it in a new book under his own name. A classic bit of copyright infringement. Take that, Michael Morpurgo! But then he realised if he wanted people to still believe he was dead, it was probably best if he didn't use his real name, as publishing a book from beyond the grave wasn't very common. There we go, much better. While Schmablo was doing this, Robbie Rotten had somehow managed to set himself on fire, and it was all a bit too much chaos for Dick Dastardly, who went outside and kicked the bin over to take out his frustration. He then picked it back up again, because even amongst villains, littering isn't cool. Once the commotion had died down, the phone rang, and Megumi was calling to see if she could come over. Schmablo was delighted by this, another chance to flirt with the woman of his dreams. But, as they talked, it turned out Megumi was more intelligent than he ever believed. In fact, she too wanted to be a member of a criminal gang, and if they let her join, she promised to help them steal even bigger items than lamps. With Megumi's help, after a long discussion, they settled on a new plan. Schmablo had informed the group that he was aware of the disappearance of some priceless paintings. Of course, these were his paintings, but the rest of them didn't need to know that. Together, they identified 3 potential locations that these paintings could have been sold to. Number 1 was the Movers and Shakers gym, number 2 was the Blue Velvet nightclub, and number 3, probably the most likely of all, was the Municipal Museum. To cover all bases, they would do 3 different heists on 3 different nights. And, by the end of this mission, the paintings would hopefully be in Schmablo's hands again. The scheme was laid out, darkness had fallen, and the gang headed to their first location, the Movers and Shakers gym. The library had been one thing, but in such a public place as this, Schmablo couldn't risk being recognised. And so, as the others went in, he devised a plan that in the event of an emergency, he would change into a clever disguise. Initially though, it was important to act natural. So, Megumi hit the weights, Dick Dastardly went for a run on the treadmill, and the rest of them went over towards the punching bags. Fagin took a short break from dancing to scope out the upstairs. But apart from some fruit bowls, there didn't appear to be much to steal. The gym was turning out to be disappointingly ordinary. But then, the worst possible thing happened. Bella Goth walked in. In a panic, Schmablo changed to his disguise straight away. He could overhear Bella from the other side of the building. She was asking around about the location of a famous painter. Schmablo attempted to reach the others to tell them they had to leave now, but he could not find the right moment to sneak past. With great intuition, Megumi sensed what was going on and stepped in to help by engaging Bella in casual conversation. She kept it up for quite some time, and after Bella had finally left, she relayed the whole thing to Schmablo. Apparently, Megumi had managed to get herself and 4 friends invites to Bella Goth's house. Schmablo couldn't believe it. It was a daunting prospect, but his paintings could very well be in that house, and he might now have the perfect opportunity to steal them back right from under Bella's nose. Tomorrow's heist on the nightclub would have to be postponed, and the next day, all anyone could think about was how on earth they were going to raid the Goth residence. Dick Dastardly tried remote controlling a drone around the neighbourhood to get a view of the house from the air. Of course, he wasn't looking at the screen while doing this, so the drone crashed into a tree before he could get any footage. Thankfully, Megumi came by later that day with some better information. Rumour had it that Bella's room was situated at the very top of the house, and this was most likely where Schmablo's paintings could be hidden. If Fagin, Dick and Robbie could keep the Goth family distracted downstairs, then Schmablo could creep upstairs by himself in his disguise and take back his art for good. Around 10 PM that night, they turned up on the premises and Schmablo wasted no time. He made a beeline straight for the stairs. One flight, and then another. But as he reached the top floor, he was shocked to find that Bella hadn't gone down to greet the other guests. She was still here. And, for the first time since that fateful day when she had broken his heart all those years ago, Schmablo and Bella were now face to face.